smoke, fire, and the smell of real black powder. It's time to step back into the 1800s. If you ever wanted to shoot a traditional black powder muzzleloader, or maybe it's been a while since you took the old black powder rifle out of the safe or closet or went on a muzzleloader hunt, this video will take you right back to the basics. From powder, patch to ball and barrel, I'll show you how to get started the traditional way, the mountain man way. So grab your rifle, your shooting bag, and your powder horn, and let's make some smoke. A few nights ago, I had a couple of guys stop by the ranch. One of them had just inherited his granddaddy's muzzleloader collection. His granddaddy was a buckskinner for years, and the other fella hadn't shot a traditional muzzleloader for over 30 years. Both were getting ready to go out on a muzzleloader elk hunt, and both wanted a muzzleloader refresher. Now, when I'm talking muzzleloaders, I'm talking traditional muzzleloaders. I've got my Thompson Center Hawken style rifle. It's a cap lock or percussion lock. As you can see here, this is the lock. We're talking about the lock. It's unloaded. There's no cap on this nipple. This is where you would prime the gun by putting a percussion cap on the nipple, pull the trigger, the hammer would fall, and ignite the primer, igniting the main charge, discharging the rifle. That's a percussion rifle. When I'm talking traditional muzzleloaders, I'm talking about flint locks as well. You can include them in there. Flint lock ignition system works off of a flint, striking the frizzen, showering sparks into the pan, igniting the main charge, and discharging the rifle. I'm not going to talk about the flintlock rifle so much. The flintlock has a few more nuances than the percussion lock rifle. So what we're going to talk about today is primarily the percussion lock, but it also transfers over to the flintlock as well. Any traditional muzzleloaders included in what we're talking about today. Let's get started talking about some of what you're going to need. You're going to need a few tools. One of the essential tools is a loading jag. This is a loading jag. Screws into your ramrod or your range rod, whichever you're operating with. And as you can see, or maybe not, I hope you can, it's concave right there. That fits onto the ball. When you load the ball, it won't deform the ball or the conical. And then these ribs here, is if you're going to use this as a cleaning jag, these ribs will grip onto the cleaning patch, which I'm going to talk about later, and go through the gun and clean it that way. Some different examples. This is a Thompson Center cleaning jag. Came with my Thompson Center gun. You see it's got a lot of ribs there, so it'll really grip that cloth and pull that cleaning cloth through there. And I have a smaller one as well. You may also need a ball puller in case you dry ball. That means you loaded a ball, but you didn't put powder in. There's two types of people in the muzzleloader world. There's them that's dry balled and them that's gonna dry ball. When it happens to you, this might be your friend. You'd put this on the end of your ramrod or your range rod. It screws on. You'd push it in, maybe tap it a little bit so that screw seats into the ball, and then you'd screw that into the ball like that and hopefully pull the ball out of the bore. If that doesn't work, there's other procedures for a dry ball situation, but we're not going to go into that right now. So pullers, there's also a device, has a little wormy little wire on there that you'd use to get a patch out. If you dropped a patch in there and can't get it out, you put that in and you twist that wire and that'll connect to the patch and pull that out as well. But you can also use a ball puller to go in there, screw into that patch and pull it out if you run into that situation. Now you're going to need a nipple wrench at some point because you're going to need to take a nipple off of your gun. This is a nipple wrench from Thompson Center. I think I got it off a Track of the Wolf, I'm not sure. But it has a fitting to go over your nipple to get the nipple off. Has a little, like a claw hammer to get your barrel wedges out, and then a little hammer to tap the barrel wedge back in place. Got a hole in it so you can put a tether on there and keep it on your shooting bag or around your neck. Very handy. This is a nipple wrench that I keep on my shooting bag. I've had it for years. Comes apart kind of like this. It's got a little handle Goes in like this. Now I've got a little nipple wrench that I can put on there. Easy pleasy out in the field. Works great. Everything goes back inside, screws back together like this. And like I say, I've got it on a little tether. It hangs right off of my shooting bag. So get you a good nipple wrench. Maybe 2 or 3. There's several kinds out there. You know the old axiom, 2 is 1, 1 is none. When you clean your gun, you're going to need a bore brush. There's a couple types. This one is a wire bore brush. It has a wire that goes inside here. It kind of holds in place. And this is a softer bristle, nylon bristle, I think. I like those better than the brass bristles. The brass bristles tend to get stuck when you go to pull them out, and it could be a real booger. Sometimes it'll pull this and separate these 2 pieces, and then you got a problem. This is one that I like to use. This is about a 40 caliber bore brush. I use that with my 50 caliber, and I put a patch on there, and it'll help scrub a dub the old bore. So if you want to get a little undersized brush to put a patch on to really scrub it, that works well as well. So you need some of those. We're going to go over some of the basics of the muzzleloader, name some of the parts, some of the nomenclature, so we're all talking about the same thing. So this is a Hawken style half stock rifle. This wood is the stock. We have the fore end and the butt stock. You have the butt plate, patch box that can contain patches or patch lube or cleaning tools or what have you. You got the trigger guard, you got the lock and the hammer, the nipple or the cone, depending on what you want to call it. There's a flash channel that goes into the bore right there. You got the barrel, right? The rear sight, the front sight. Some guns, these are all adjustable. This one's a little bit adjustable. This one with you adrift if you need to. Now, we're going to talk ramrods and range rods. This is a ramrod. Goes right there. It's got a little concave area right there so that when you put the ball and powder in, you can load it, do that, right? So that's what that's for. Well, first we want to check, see if this gun's loaded. How do we do that, Mountain Man Dave, you might ask? Well, we're going to point the muzzle in a safe direction. We're going to take the ramrod and we're going to drop it inside. You hear that metal sound? That's metal on metal. That tells you this ramrod is hitting the base of the breech. There's not a ball or powder between the two, so it makes that sound. I also make note just how much is sticking out of the end of the barrel. So I know that that is not loaded. And if I want to line up the end of the barrel with that ramrod, you see it comes to there. So I know that's 2 ways to check that it's not loaded. Now, if I normally shoot, say, 70 or 80 grains, I normally shoot 70, you can take your ramrod, let's say it marks right there at 70 grains, take a little knife and make a little hash mark right there on your ramrod, and that'll tell you when you go in, it stops right there at that hash mark. You know that it's got a charge in that bore. So that's how you check to see if the gun is loaded. I put out a video that goes in depth on range rods and ramrods. I'll put the link below in the description. You can click on that, watch that whole video, tell you all about range rods and ramrods and whatnots. But this is a range rod. It's made out of brass. I like to have one with me when I'm at the range or otherwise shooting. I don't usually have it with me. I'm hunting because it's just too much to carry with me. But at the range, I like this. I've got a 50 caliber jag on the end of it. I can put that into the bore and load. I don't have to keep taking the ramrod in and out of the gun. I just leave the ramrod in the gun, leave it alone, and use the range rod as my loading rod when I'm shooting at rendezvous or other competitions or just out shooting for fun where I'm going to shoot a lot of rounds. The other advantage to a range rod like this is if you do dry ball and you put the ball puller on the end here, you've got a good firm rod that won't flex and won't break that you can insert and try to pull that ball out. As well as when I clean, I like to use this range rod when I clean in case I get a patch kind of stuck in there. Again, I can really pull on this and get it out. So these are very functional. I like the brass one. I think they sell them in aluminum or stainless steel or other material they make them out of, but I really like the brass. The brass is softer than the steel of the barrel, and it doesn't mar or otherwise damage the riflings in your gun. Well, you're going to need powder to shoot this old powder gun with. I like to shoot black powder. I'm able to get it in the region of the U.S. that I'm at, so I traditionally shoot GoX black powder. This is a 2F, but I generally shoot 3F. 3F shoots a little bit hotter, a little bit faster than the 2F, and I just traditionally have been using 3F for years. I don't have a problem with it. Usually I load up a hunting load of about 80 to 90 grains, depending on whether I'm shooting round ball or conical, and 80 to 90 grains of 3F GoX. It'll take down everything from a Utah mule deer to a Montana bison. I took a bison cow several years ago using 90 grains of GoX with a conical. Knocked her right down. Good eating. Or you can use a black powder substitute. This is Pyrodex. I've had this can of Pyrodex since it came out back in the 80s, and I bet you I haven't shot just a handful of shots out of this can of Pyrodex. Nothing wrong with it. This is RS, rifle shotgun. So on the modern ones that come in kind of a black can, plastic can, it's marked RS for rifle and shotgun. P is for pistol. You'd measure it volume for volume the same as you would with GoX black powder or Schutzen black powder or whatever black powder you're using. Swiss, Schutzen, some burn hotter, some burn cleaner. Just depends what you can get in the region of the U.S. you're at. Now, a pound of powder is about 700 grains. So if you shoot 70 grains, that's about 100 rounds per pound of black powder. So that's one way to figure it. Now, you're also going to need caps. If it's a percussion gun, you need caps. If it's a flintlock, obviously you need flints. But we're talking percussion guns. So around these parts, these caps are occasionally fairly easy to get. These are number 11 caps. Sometimes you can get the really good ones, these German caps. They burn a little hotter. And there was a period of time between 2020 and about 2022 that everything was hard to get. And so I picked up some musket nipples for my muzzleloader, and I got some musket caps just in case I had to transition, because the musket caps were more available than the number 11 caps. Musket caps are quite a bit larger than your number 11. Right now, number 11s are fairly plentiful. Before we take the gun out, shoot it, we got to make sure it's ready to be loaded and fire. Now, I've already showed you how to check to make sure the gun is unloaded. So we're going to assume you've already done that. So we've checked to make sure the gun's not loaded. Now we're going to run a clean patch down it just to make sure we get any grease or oil or solvents that might be in there out of there. And we just wipe it out. That way, when we pour the powder in, it ain't going to get hung up on anything. It's going to go all the way in, settle down into the breech like it needs to. It won't get damp or mucky or gummy and cause us a misfire. So we wiped it out, made sure that it's dry and clear. And we're going to take our unloaded rifle. We've ensured it's not loaded. We've just run a dry patch through it. So again, we know it's not loaded. This next step, never do with a loaded firearm, and only do it one time when you're preparing the rifle for loading. Don't do it again after you've done it. So we're going to cock the rifle. We're going to take a number 11 percussion cap with our capper. I'm going to simulate it. I'm not going to really put a cap on here because I'm indoors and it'll scare mama if I pop the cap. So I'm going to take the cap, I'm going to set it onto the nipple, slide it off, and make sure it's seated. The next thing I'm going to do is, in a safe direction, pointed at the ground, at some dirt, about this far from the dirt, I'm going to fire this cap. What that's going to do is that's going to clean out the flash channel, make sure there's no oil or solvents or anything in the flash channel. We only do this with an empty rifle, one that we have verified is empty and is not loaded. And we're going to point this rifle in a safe direction. Always point a rifle in a safe direction. Treat a gun as if it's loaded at all times. Safety, safety, safety. So it's unloaded. We've got it capped. We want to make sure the channel is clear. So we're going to point it at the ground. Pop! And we watch for the soil, the sand, the grass, or leaves that we pointed it at about that far to go poof. Now, once we've done that, like I say, don't do it again. And I'll tell you, we were at the range several years ago, and a buddy had brought a guest to shoot their gun, a newcomer. And while we were all shooting, this person had gone through the process we just showed and then forgot that he loaded his rifle. Yeah, you can imagine. By God's grace, nobody got hurt. But that feller discharged that rifle to the side of the range. Fortunately, hit a dirt berm. Had he pointed it the other way, there was a bunch of us standing that way. One of us could have been killed or injured. So now that I've cleared the channel, I'm ready to load that rifle. So, what do I need to load the rifle with? Well, you're going to need a powder measure of some kind. I like this kind because it has a swivel tip to it, acts as a great funnel. It's gradiated here in 10 grain increments so that I can go all the way up to, let's see, 120 or just 10, just depends on what I want. Like today, I'm going to set it at 70. Now, you got a powder flask or a horn. Today, I've got my powder flask. So if I was going to load this rifle today, and again, I'm indoors, so I'm going to simulate. So I'm going to take my powder flask, and I'm going to fill up my measurer, swivel the top over, set the powder flask aside. Now, there's a reason why we load into the measurer and not directly from the flask. Now, after we've shot a little bit, there is a possibility that you've got a hot ember down your bore. And if you take this flask, it's made of metal, brass, and you pour directly from this flask into that barrel and come in contact with a hot ember, you got a hand grenade in your hand. And that ain't going to be a good day. So we take our powder measure, our 70 grains. We're going to pour that into the barrel. And then I like to give it a little tap, tap, tap so that powder is worked all the way down into the breech. And then I'm going to take a patch, because I need a patch, because I shoot patch ball. So I've got a patch. These are .010 thickness. That's the thickness of the patch. And I spit lube them if I'm going to shoot target practice, or if I'm going to be shooting at a competition where I shoot multiple rounds. I find that spit lube not only lubricates the ball, but it also helps clean the bore and I don't get near the fouling. If I use any kind of a butter or grease or whatever to grease my patch or pre-lube patches, I get 4 or 5 shots, and then the buildup of fouling is so bad, I have to clean it out. But as long as I'm using spit lube, I can shoot. I only have to clean it out a little bit. So I'm going to lube this up and get me a ball. Okay, so we've got our powder in the bore. I've got my lube patch. I'm going to center the patch over the bore. Then I'm going to set my round ball right there. Now, that's a .490 round ball and a 010 patch. If you do the math in your head, that's 50 calibers. So we've got that in there. I'm going to take my short starter, get the ball and patch started, take the little longer end, get that ball started even further. Now that it's in there about 4 to 6 inches, I'm going to take my ramrod or my range rod and get that ball in there and get it seated. Now, the question asked the other night was, how hard do you seat it? Firmly. When you feel that's in, give it a little oomph. Yep, it's seated, and then you know it's in there. And again, we've made a mark we talked about on our ramrod to show at 70 grains or whatever grainage you're shooting at, how far in that ramrod needs to go. If that's your mark and you're into the mark, you know you've got it in there and it's seated. You don't have to beat the heck out of it. But if you go in and it stops part way down and your mark's clear up here, well, you know you've got a gap and you've got to overcome that. That could be caused by fouling that builds up in the barrel, and you've got to get past that fouling. And if that happens, you know you got to swab it out after the next shot. No big deal. So we got powder, patch, ball. Now we need a cap. So we got powder, patch, and ball seated in the bore. Now bring it to full cock so I can get my cap on the nipple. I take my capper. This contains about 50 caps. Get one into the little end right there. And I'm going to slide one onto the nipple. Press it down. Make sure it's on there. Now, if there was a cap on there and powder, patch, and ball inside here, when I pull the trigger, it's going to go bang. And that's how you load and fire your muzzleloader. Now, we just went through the loading sequence of loading and firing a patched round ball in a muzzleloader. And as you saw me demonstrate, I held a patch over the muzzle and put a ball on there, and then I started that ball. Now, you can make or buy or preferably make loading blocks. That's what this is. And traditionally, you would load a patch and ball in there. As you can see, that's what I've got in there. These are 50 caliber patch and ball. And you could have it on a lanyard around your neck. So after you put your powder into your gun, like that, you would take one of these already started patch and balls, center it over the muzzle like that, and then you would take your short starter and get it started in there. And then that's a quick load. There's also modern quick loads like this. These are a hollow tube all the way through. One end's marked ball, one is marked powder. So I've got a ball and a patch pushed through there, right? So if I've fired and I need to reload in a hunting situation, we would pop the powder side off, pour the powder in, center the ball, and push it in like that. And once it's in, I can take my ramrod and finish loading the rifle. Now we've shot the gun, we got to clean it. And cleaning ain't a big deal. You can make it as big a job as you want or as easy as you want. I like to make it easy. What I use is a cleaning vessel. It can be something like this or a bucket, or you can clean it in mama's kitchen sink or the shop sink in your garage, or you can get in the shower with it and scrub a dub-dub. You ain't going to hurt the barrel of that gun, no matter how you do it, as long as you do it and clean it consistently, and then put some rust preventative on that gun when you're done. When I go to the range, if I want to clean at the range, I use that little cleaning vessel and about 2 bottles of water. You know, the 16-ounce drinking water bottles. You don't need a ton of water. I also have made up some moose milk. My moose milk, I go about this much of ballistol, this much water, and I add a little bit of rubbing alcohol to it. Does the rubbing alcohol make a difference? I don't know. I think it helps dry out the water just a little bit faster. But that's my moose milk recipe. I don't know how many ounces that is, or that is, or that is. But, you know, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. This is the ballistol I use. I bought some of this, gosh, a couple of years ago, and it's still about half full. I use it all the time, but it lasts a long time. You could use CLP or whatever rust preventative you like. I like something that cleans, lubricates, and protects against rust. If you live in a high humid area, you want something that's going to fight rust. So get you something great like this ballistol, whatever. It's good stuff. Or CLP. CLP works great too. If you like that, use something that's going to displace moisture and preserve that metal. These old powder guns, they take good care of you if you take care of them. They'll be around a long time after you're gone. Hopefully that's no time soon. To start cleaning on this guy, I'm going to pull the hammer back so that I can get my nipple wrench on there and get that nipple out. Because we got to clean the nipple if we've shot it. So let's use that to get the nipple out of there. Just take that and get you a cup, a little coffee cup. Put some warm water and a couple drops of dish soap in there. Put that nipple in with that dish soap in that coffee cup, swirl it around. You can take an old toothbrush if you want and kind of scrub a dub-dub a little bit. Take a safety pin and poke through the flash hole, make sure that's cleaned out. And then I just let that soak in the water till I'm done. It ain't going to hurt it. So first off, we have to separate the barrel from the stock. So remove your ramrod. That helps hold the barrel in place, and we're going to take the barrel wedge out. Now with this nipple wrench that I have, I take the little hammer end of it and just press against the barrel wedge, and as you can see, it pops that out, and I take it out, set it aside. Now if you've got a Hawken style that's similar to the CVA mountain rifle or the Lyman Great Plains rifle. You'll have 2 barrel wedges. Take them both out. I don't know if it makes a difference, but I set the front aside and the rear aside so I can always put the rear wedge and the front wedge back where they came from. Does it make a difference? I don't know, but I do that just because. So now I've got the barrel wedge out, the ramrod out, the nipple is off. I lift the barrel out, and the barrel and stock are separate, and I set the stock aside for now. There's something I want to point out to you real quick. There's a screw right there. It's called a clean out screw or a bolster screw, and you have a breech plug. Those 2 things are not meant to come out. If you take this out, this screw out, you're eventually going to lose it, or you're going to mar the head up and it's going to look like heck. If you take the breech plug out, you'll have a hell of a time getting it back in and lining it up properly with the flash channel. If for some reason there's a catastrophic failure of some kind that you've got to take this off, take it to a qualified gunsmith that knows what they're doing. Otherwise, you'll have tool marks all over this. It'll be a nightmare. I can't tell you how many internet forums I've read where guys are asking how to put this back in, and they're all told the same thing. You shouldn't have took it out in the first place. I'm going to fill this up about halfway. Doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be exactly right, but about halfway with water. I'm going to put a couple of drops, I don't know, maybe a half a teaspoon, if that, of dish soap in there. Stir it around so it's ready to go. Now, some folks are of the school of thought that it has to be hot water. Hot water don't hurt. It helps heat up the barrel so it'll dry a little faster when you're done. Or it can be medium warm. I use generally hot enough water that I can still handle the barrel. I can still handle the water. I don't want it scalding hot. But it can also be room temperature. Or if I'm doing it at the range, if I'm cleaning at the range and I'm using a drinking water bottle, that's just room temperature. So it doesn't matter. Soapy water. And I'm going to take my barrel and I'm going to immerse it in that water. Then I'm going to take my moose milk and I'm going to pour a little bit down there, I don't know, a couple ounces, and let it just sit in there for a few minutes. After it's sat in there for a few minutes, I'm going to take a patch and my range rod. Now my patch, I'm going to get a little bit of suds on there, just get it damp. I have found that when I clean with a dry patch, the dry patch tends to grab in the barrel and get stuck. So if I lubricate it with a little bit of soapy water, it doesn't tend to get stuck. So we've got moose milk in the barrel. The barrel is immersed in our soapy water. We're going to put our cleaning patch on there. We're going to take our range rod with a cleaning jag on the end, and we're going to we run that down the bore, pump that soapy water up and down into the barrel, scrub-a-dub-dub. You're going to pull that patch out, and it's going to be all dirty and black. And you're going to repeat that process over and over again. I don't know, usually about 4 or 5 patches, sometimes more, sometimes less. Depends on how much you've been shooting. And you can refresh the water. Water's cheap, soap is cheap. Dump that water out, get a little more in there, scrub, scrub, scrub. Now, once I've got a patch that comes out pretty clean, then I know it's time to dry. Now, if I'm at home, I might take my air compressor, put the fitting on the air compressor right there, and blow that bore out so it's dry quickly. If I don't have my air compressor handy, I'll just take some dry patches and run them up and down 2 or 3 times and get that moisture out of there. I'll also take a couple of patches with as pure a rubbing alcohol as I can get, generally 99% rubbing alcohol or 70% rubbing alcohol. Take those patches, get them damp. They don't want to be dripping wet, but run them up and down too, as that alcohol will displace and dry the water that's in there. And don't forget your flash channel here where the nipple goes. Take a Q-tip, run that in there, scrub it out. Once you've got that cleaned out, same thing. I take a little bit of alcohol on a Q-tip and clean that out. Swirl it around, get it nice and clean. Once it's dried out, you're good to go. Now, something that might happen is you can get some flash rust inside the bore as you're cleaning. You get done, you think you got it dried out, you run a patch down it, and the patch comes out, looks a little rust colored. Well, that's probably just flash rust. It ain't going to kill it, ain't going to damage anything. So let's just keep going on with the process. So the process I do next is I take me some of this ballast off, get it on a cleaning patch. Same process. I'm going to run that cleaning patch down with the ballistol several times, and I might repeat that 2 or 3 times just to make sure I've got a good coating in there. That ballistol is going to displace water or any moisture that's in there, and it's going to give you a good barrier as a rust preventative. Good stuff. Same thing with CLP. If you're using a CLP, clean, lubricate, protect, that's going to help. Then I'm going to take that ballistol and I'm going to wipe all over my flash channel. I may even take a Q-tip with just a little bit on there. I don't want it dripping, soaking wet, and I'm going to wipe inside that flash channel with that ballistol and that Q-tip, paying extra attention to the threads. And I'm going to wipe all this down with the ballistol, and it's all ready to put back together. All right, we've cleaned the barrel, and now we want to clean our lock. So the lock is held in place by one bolt that goes through the side, or a screw that goes through the side. We're going to take that out. Careful not to mar the wood. And then ease that lock out. Some of them fit pretty tight in here. If they're real tight in there, you can use this bolt, just put it back in and then tap it like that, and it'll kind of push that lock out so that you can get it out. If it still doesn't want to come out, you just gently use a flathead screwdriver and gently get that out of there. Then that lock comes out. So that's the interior of the Thompson center lock. Now, they'll all be similar. They're not all the same. CVA, and I don't know, I think maybe Traditions uses a V-shaped spring here, where Thompson uses a coil spring. But there's really nothing in here for you to self-adjust, remove, repair. If it's damaged, take it to a locksmith or somebody who knows what they're doing. But after you've shot, take your cleaning patch with some ballistol, wipe it all down, get all the nooks and crannies. You don't want it dripping with solvent, but you want it protected real well. Kind of like this one. This has been put up for a month or so, and you can see it's not dripping, but it's got plenty on there. And I'm going to take a Q-tip, and I'm going to clean out the little cup on the hammer where those number 11 caps go. I'm going to wipe that baby out with a little ballistol. So this has all been cleaned off real well. I'm going to use that same ballistol, wipe any fouling or any dirt that might be in there. The ballistol won't hurt the wood, so you can wipe down. And I'm ready to reinstall the lock. Get it back in place. Take my screw, put it in there, and we're good to go. Now, you don't have to crank this down super duper tight. It has to be firm, obviously, but you can over tighten it and split the stock if you're not careful. So just nice and firm in place. That lock is just how it should be. So we've cleaned the lock, we've cleaned the stock, we've cleaned the barrel. Now it's time to reassemble. So it's got a little bit of a hook on the end, if you can see that, on the breech. We're going to put that breech, hook it in there, lay it back in place. Now it's back in place. I'm going to just gently grip the stock and the barrel together. Some guns have a little more separation there, and you have to grip it a little bit. Others you don't. I'm going to take the wedge pin, and I'm going to gently slide it back in. Some wedge pins don't line up exactly. And you got to watch, because when you push it through, if the tip of that wedge pin hits this metal, a Sean, I think it's called, this metal piece, it can push it out, damage it. So watch as you're pushing it in. Does it clear it? If it clears it, go ahead and just push it back in place. Some of them fit a little tighter than others, and you have to use this little hammer. Or if you've got a little plastic gunsmithing hammer or mallet, you tap that in if you need to. But always watch this little piece of metal and the tip of the wedge, that the wedge doesn't push that out. The little screws yes, I think they're screws. Little screws right there that hold this in place are very tiny and short. And so if you whack that, it can pop right off. So don't do that. So now we've got it put back together. We're ready to put our nipple back on. So we've had our nipple in the cleaning solution. We've scrubbed it maybe with a toothbrush. We're going to wipe it down, dry it. We've blown it out with our air compressor, or otherwise let it sit and get dry. We can see we reinstall that nipple. And put a little bit of boar butter, or you could use any other kind of lubricant you want, some anti-seize on the threads of that nipple so it doesn't seize up in there. Use your nipple wrench, screw it in, get it tight. Doesn't have to be torqued down super tight, just firm so it doesn't back out. And that's got that all reassembled. Now, we can put our ramrod back in. And we're going to wipe the whole thing down with a little ballistol, and then with a lint-free rag so that it's ready to go in the gun safe and say pretty, pretty, pretty. So that's how we load and fire and clean a traditional percussion rifle. Well, thanks for joining me, Pard. I've enjoyed showing you how I get ready to shoot my muzzleloader and how I clean this old trusty muzzleloader. I hope it's been a good refresher course if you needed one. And if you're new to the sport, I hope it answers some questions for you. If you've got more questions or I didn't cover something well enough for you, please leave a comment below and I'll answer for you. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit the hype button if it's next to the comment. That hype button helps the channel out. Doesn't cost you a dime, but it really helps the channel out. And if you really like to help the channel out, you can buy me a cup of coffee. I've got a link below to buy a cup of coffee, Mountain Man Dave. I sure appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the range or out in the field. As always, keep your powder dry, and remember, black powder matters.